Golden, I got another question for you. I always have another question for you. Why grounding is important? What's grounding? Why grounding is important, especially after Gong baths?
Okay.
Before that, you know what I'm going to say. Please subscribe our YouTube video and turn the bell on for all the notifications for our new videos. And please sum up for us. Yes?
Well, grounding is this catch-all term that's used a lot in, I don't know, everything from meditation practice, all sorts of activities. And I think people have got a slightly different understanding of what it entails and what it is. So all I can do is to give you my experience of how it impacts and how important it is when we're doing sound practitioner work. I mean, you're talking particularly about the end of a Gong bath.
Yes.
So that's what I want to focus on for people who are wondering, both people who are taking part in a Gong bath and people who are coming to a Gong bath. I think it's actually quite an important idea for you to get a grip on.
Grounding and why grounding is so important.
So we're talking about at the end of a Gong bath. Although in some ways it's also relevant at the beginning of the Gong bath. It's kind of at the beginning of the journey, but most especially at the end of the journey that we go on. Those of you who've experienced Gong journeying, let's call it, we use the term journeying advisedly because we can go on all kinds of, as our consciousness gets raised, we can find ourselves in all kinds of extraordinary scenarios and environments. People talk about swimming in the depths of the ocean, flying through the cosmos, visiting past lives, visiting future lives, all kinds of stuff. And it all involves out-of-body experiences, very often are involved. So, so grounding, coming to the end of that process, that's what we're talking about. And really from the Gong practitioner's point of view, what we're concerned about is that we're sending people away at the end of the Gong bath, back on terra firma, if you like, back on the ground, and not still flying around in inner or outer space.
So they got a landing, like the aircraft landing.
I think that's a good way of looking at it, really. So we're concerned that they land well and that their feet are on the ground, and they're not still flying around wherever, or off. We sometimes, perhaps rather disparagingly, call it off with the fairies, that we're back.
If people not really grounding, what happens? What will happen?
Well, it can be very difficult to integrate what's happened to them. I think that's one thing to say. And it can
Still
be we used to use this again, this term spaced out. But if you understand what the term spaced out means, well, I think that really is also a way of describing not being grounded at the end of a Gong bath. So perhaps you get the idea of what it is, what not being grounded is, but let's talk about perhaps how do we go about grounding?
How we ground people.
What do we do? Well, there's several elements that I like to employ, which I think are important. The first one that novice Gong players are taught really early on in their training, which is to emphasize and focus the end of the Gong bath. We call these penultimate and ultimate strokes. This is what all beginner Gong players are taught. What are penultimate and ultimate strokes? They can be anything, but the most important thing, there's an intention behind them that this is the end of the Gong bath. It kind of signals the end, whatever it is. It can be actually quite loud and firm and forthright, and it can be quite gentle and very quiet. We employ all kinds of different techniques, but the intention behind it is the really important thing.
And besides the gong?
Okay, so there's this ending the gong bath, kind of signalling the end of the gong bath.
Yes.
Then there's the silence at the end of the gong bath. This is a really important time, and it's what often we think of as being the time when the integration happens, when people are coming back into their normal consciousness, back into awareness of their bodies, beginning to get involved in the grounding process, and that is the integration, literally, of whatever the experiences they've had over that period of time.
Yes. And how about the other instruments?
Right, yeah, so there are some really popular instruments that gong players will typically use to aid this grounding process. And the most popular one, I think, is that we use a lot, is the Koshi chime. We've got a lovely earth. They come in four flavours, 4 elements. We've got an earth element chime here.
Yes.
I was going to shut up for a minute so people can hear it instead of my booming voice.
Yes.
I mean, the thing about it is it's really...
How this little chime can ground people?
Yeah. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the fact that it's little and it's gentle makes
gentle.
it very, very helpful. It's what was I going to say? You know, it's the instrument that people most remark about at the end of gong baths. To me, they, you know, we've been playing these massive, beautiful gongs for 45 minutes. Huge, great big things, making these extraordinary sounds. But people most remark as, what was that sound at the end of the gong bath? And it's number one, okay, it's a very nice, attractive sound. But, you know, I think the other reason, Yi Ling, that people mention it a lot is that the integration process has started, and they now become really focused in their kind of normal, rational consciousness of, oh, there's an instrument that sounds attractive, and they can focus on it in a way that it's part actually of the integrative process.
Yes.
I mean, there are I've got these beautiful little bells that are like nice for grounding that were given to me actually as a gift, that also are small and tinkly.
What if some people they feel dizzy or spaced out after all the koshi or the other instrument? What's your suggestion for them?
Well, there's other things I was going to go on to. Breathing is very, very good. Having some slow pranayama is very helpful. Of course, you can do some exercise. Of course, you know more about this. Yeah, if you wanted to.
How about chanting?
Chant.
Sharing.
That's the other thing the 2 other things I was going to mention, which are very popular, is you may have heard of the shruti boxes, these drone harmonium type instruments that gong players will often use alongside chanting or just generally singing mantra or even improvising with their voice. This can be very integrative and very, very grounding. What else were we talking about?
Yeah, the other one, 2 things. One is chanting, one is talking, sharing.
Sharing. Yeah, sharing, of course. That is actually verbalizing the experience you've had to the people, that sharing it with the other people in the room.
Sometimes you can have to organize the language.
Exactly
so. So that will help people to.
I think so. Some people really are very quiet and really have got nothing to say at the end of a gong bath, and that's understandable. Other people who often can be not very talkative come up with the most amazingly poetic stuff, we get incredible sharing sometimes from the most unlikely people. And this is grounding, not only for the person who's giving the sharing, but for the people on the receiving end of it, I think. It kind of helps to kind of ground them too.
Good. Thank you very much for replying my questions. We have a lot of story about sound therapy, about the sound. Please subscribe and press the bell. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.